Okay, now the next portion, and that is called Khukat. Khukat is a type of mitzvah, a type of commandment that transcends normative logic. So I'll explain that there are three types of commandments in the Torah. One type is a type of commandment that even if we would not be commanded, we would figure it out for ourselves, certain moral and ethical practices. In other words, if the Torah would not tell us you should not murder, hopefully people would understand that this is a very logical type of law for a society, or you shall not steal. So these are types of law that they make perfect sense, and we could figure it out for ourselves. Then there's a type of law that also makes perfect sense, but we wouldn't necessarily think of it. But once you hear it, it's, oh, that makes sense. I wouldn't have thought of that on my own. But now that I see that it's a command, it makes perfect sense. Then there's a type of mitzvah, and that's what this parsha is about. Chukat is a third type of mitzvah that it actually transcends normative logic. It isn't apparently logical. And therefore, it's like, well, why would we do this? And this is what is called in our tradition, accepting the yoke of heaven. In other words, we accept that everything in the Torah is for our good, even if we don't understand it. There are many, many mitzvot that we could figure out reasons for them, but that's not why we do them. We're told that ultimately we don't really know why we're doing certain mitzvot, even though we could figure out all kinds of reasonable explanations for the mitzvah. So in other words, this kind of mitzvah transcends normative logic. So what is this example in the portion of Chukat? At the time of the temple, there were many, many laws of what's called ritual purity. That in other words, to go to the temple, one had to be in a state of purity. And very, very complex kind of laws. We don't have almost all of these laws anymore because we don't have a temple. But one of the ways of becoming impure is by being in contact with death. If someone is in contact with a dead body, they become ritually impure. And to become pure, in most cases, we go to what's called a mikvah. We go to a ritual bath, and we still have ritual baths today. And we do use them for a certain type of ritual purity. But this kind of ritual purity, to be purified from death, this applied only in the temple. So what would happen if someone was in contact with a dead person or a dead animal? Well, how do you become pure? So in this portion of Khukat, it explains a ritual that would purify a person. Now, one of the ways to explain the word Khukat, this type of mitzvah that transcends logic, is the word paradox. It's paradoxical. So what's paradoxical about this ritual to purify ourselves from the impurity of death is those who prepare everything that would purify people, they become impure. and those people who are impure become pure. So by logic, it's like, I don't understand this. How can the people who are making everyone else pure become impure? On the surface, it doesn't make sense. And yet, this and a number of other mitzvot, we're told this is a decree, and even if you don't understand it, you should do it. So one of them, you might be surprised to hear this, but I'm sure you know or have heard that Jews have many, many dietary laws. Many, many dietary laws. We eat kosher food. It has to be checked that it's kosher, because we can't use certain ingredients in food. Like today, many, many different additives actually come from animals, and different colorings come from animals. And that makes it not kosher for us. And the biggest thing is that we don't mix meat and milk. We don't, at the same time, we don't eat meat and milk, and we don't cook meat and milk together. So there are many, many reasons that we could propose for these different laws. But we're actually told this is a chok. We don't really know the real reason. The Torah tells us that this is the law. We do not mix meat and milk. And even if we don't understand it, in a sense, we show we'll call it our loyalty to God and the Torah, that we do it even without understanding. And that's why at Mount Sinai, when we were given the Torah, beforehand, we said to God, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. Meaning, before we received the Torah, we didn't know what would be in the Torah. But we had come to trust God on such a level that we said, whatever is in the Torah, we will do, even if we don't understand. Hopefully, we'll come to understand. But we will do it anyways. So that is one of the main ideas of this portion that we're talking about, is that this ritual to purify people from death actually make those who are making the others pure, they become impure. So this is very paradoxical. But I just want to say, and this is how we'll end, I want to say something about paradox. What is paradox? Paradox is you have one statement and you have another statement. And this statement diametrically is the opposite of this statement. In other words, if this is true, this cannot be true. And if this is true, this cannot be true. It's one or the other. And a paradox is that two different things, you can't bring them together. But, and this is a very, very important statement, in Jewish thought, we embrace paradox. Most of the world is afraid of paradox because according to logic, if you tell me this, you can't tell me this at the same time. It's either this or that. Well, so we have a very important statement that says, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim. These and these are the words of the living God. So the Jewish way of thinking is always attempting, if you have two different opinions and they appear to be absolutely opposite, we try our hardest to see what is the point of truth in each one of them. And even though we may choose one of the opinions to be the law, and that means that the other one is not the law. But nonetheless, in the Talmud, in the oral tradition, we record all of the opinions, because we accept that even though we're going to choose this one and this one, which is exactly the opposite, but we record them both because they both will have a point of truth in them. And so this is actually, you see behind me, the Stars of David. And so here you have one triangle going up, and you have one triangle going down. That's about as opposite as you can get, right? In other words, one is going up, the other is coming down. But this symbol is the idea of our ability to take different ideas, even opposites, and putting them together and seeing that they both can coexist together. One example is, in this world, fire and water are opposites. Water puts out fire, and fire makes water evaporate. So in this world, fire and water do not coexist. They're absolutely opposites. But in Hebrew, the word for heaven is shamayim. Shamayim is, the first letter is a shin, and a shin looks like a three-pronged flame. And the letter of fire is this shin, is esh. And the word for water is mayim. So shamayim is fire and water together, meaning down here, fire and water are opposites, but in heaven, the way that God relates to fire and water, they coexist perfectly. And so we are always looking to solve paradoxes by seeing what's the common thread. What's the point of truth that can bring them together? So this is one of the main themes of the Parsha of Khukat, is the whole idea of how do we deal with paradoxical situations. So with that, we've gone through 3 portions, and we have 2 more classes, and we're going to finish the book of Numbers. Okay, so I'm going to stop this recording now.